everyone. My name is Jared Winn. I'm a strategic advisor for Ceek, a Metaverse platform, as well as CEO of Winn Solutions, a blockchain and Metaverse, basically a blockchain growth hacking agency to help projects grow and expand beyond different barriers. We have a very diverse panel here today with a lot of different expertise. Firstly, by a show of hand, who here is a gamer? Okay, just to show that all of us are gamers here and we have some credibility to that extent. So we have all sorts of experience ranging from bridge building to game development and a lot of different passion, I guess, that comes into this entire ecosystem. So what we'll start with is we'll go over some brief introductions of who we are, what we do, and more importantly, what's our favorite game of all time, just to get a little bit of an icebreaker. So starting to my right, we have Jesse.
Thanks for having me here. My name is Jesse Hynes. I'm the Chief Legal Officer of Gala Games. Gala Games is a gaming company that is bringing games that you want to play and to our platform and introducing blockchain to it. You know, we're making our own games ourselves, and we're bringing outside studios onto our platform, kind of like a Steam type thing. And my favorite game, and this isn't really a good answer, but you know, I've been playing it since I was a kid, is Pokemon. I can never stop playing it. I buy every single new one that comes out.
Are we talking Pokemon on like Game Boy initially, or which Pokemon was your first?
Initially, yeah, I had I don't even know the name of the original Game Boy. Maybe it was just
Pokemon Red or Blue?
Oh, yeah, Blue originally, yeah.
I was Red, so okay. There we go.
So we're enemies.
Well, we would trade.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, very well. All right, on to Michael.
Hi. My bad. Hi, I'm Michael. I'm CEO of Ikigai Technologies. We're building products on top of the Cardano ecosystem. So one of our products is called Logosphere, and it's a layer 2 data sharing ecosystem. So really well suited to help with Metaverse projects. And my favorite game is, well, I gotta go with StarCraft, Protoss player, so.
There we go. All right, onward.
Hello. Hello, it's an honor to be up here today, sharing stage with world-class producers and entrepreneurs and lawyers today.
Keep your mouth right here.
I'm CEO of Dot Games, probably more known for the team behind Legal Kingdoms. It's a blockchain MMORTS game, a strategy game. The game has been around a year or so, and we are growing quite rapidly today. These days. And my favorite game is just like Jazz, is a Pokemon. I play many different games, but Pokemon is my favorite. Yeah.
Very well.
Hey guys, I'm Pete Blumel. I'm the studio head and CEO of Rogue Initiative. We're a traditional video game company working on console games. We all come from AAA places like Infinity Ward and Activision EA, that kind of stuff, mostly from the Call of Duty franchise. We're all old guys who've made games for a very long time. We're looking for the intersection of games and new tech. That's always the big deal for us. And in fact, the through line is always technology, whether it's crypto NFT, real-time solutions for theater and film. We have a couple companies around those spheres as well. Favorite game, I don't know. The original Metroid, Zelda Breath of the Wild, GoldenEye. There's a whole bunch that shaped my childhood. Anyway, those are a couple.
There we go. And once more, my name is Jared Winn. I have been in blockchain for about 5 years. Prior to doing strategic advisory for various companies, I was a senior vice president at Binance, spearheading philanthropic initiatives and so forth. Brought that passion and airplanes. Brought that passion essentially into various blockchain projects as I felt that there was a void between messaging and brand strategy to attract the appropriate end audiences and so forth. So my favorite game, I would say, is more of a series. I'm a huge Final Fantasy nerd in that regard, so that's my jam there.
You got a clap out there, I think.
I did get a clap, thank you. That's the first, hopefully a few. There we go, there we go. So let's just see one thing. Who here in this audience owns a Metaverse token? There we go. Now, who here that owns a Metaverse token purchased it within the last 3 months? There we go. I think we all are kind of aware that there's some sort of a Metaverse wave that we're all riding at this point, and we can talk about some of the triggers and the effects of this, whether that be related to the COVID-19 pandemic or just in general. But that said, I think that there's one major catalyst that we've all seen, and what do you guys think? What was the major company that jumped into Metaverse that might have triggered some of this or otherwise contributed?
Meta.
Go figure, right? So Facebook Meta has brought a pretty significant amount of hype with regards to the industry. Now that said, many of the players on this panel were actually in the meta space prior to Facebook even expressing interest in it. So Jesse, I'd like to learn a little bit more about Gala and specifically how Gala has developed their system, as Gala is now a top 100 market cap token essentially and has drawn a pretty significant community. And in many cases, we have a chicken and egg situation. Does a good game attract community, or is a good game going to essentially be fueled by a community that was interested in the token and so forth? So what do you feel comes first? Is it a game, or is it the tokenomics in something of this that attracts a community? And are we attracting communities from crypto, or are we attracting gamers and then bridging them into crypto?
That's a big question there. There's a lot going on there.
Oh, and mind you that he is the chief legal officer, so he might be a little vague at some of these responses.
Basically, every response is going to be vague. The answer to that is there really isn't a straightforward answer. Because when you look at the space right now, there are kind of two different subsets of people that are playing our games. There are the crypto people, everyone who's been invested in cryptocurrencies, who's been buying NFTs, who's been doing that, and some of them look at those things as investments to them. That's one subset. The other subset are true traditional gamers. And now there's obviously some overlap between both of them. But what we found at Gala Games is the most important thing is the community first. We've built a pretty amazing Epik Discord that I don't know if any of you are in it, but if you're in it, there's like 100,000 people, and we're all like family to each other. And so what immediately happens after that is every game that we bring to our ecosystem, every game that we talk to, already has 100,000 people that want to play it, or a subset of that. So when it came to our company, what came first was a vision. Most people know of Gala Games because of Mirandus. It's this amazing, epic fantasy D&D type world that's being built out, and it's actually why I first learned about the company. But it's that vision and building that community that led everyone to one place. I don't know if that really answers the question, but yeah.
No, it does, in which you usually have a passion. There's some sort of intrigue or drive behind a user to be very passionate about what it is that they're following. And at that point, there's going to be an innate support, which is where we see many successful campaigns through Kickstarter and Indiegogo and so forth. And we've seen many games that have come to life through similar foundations in which somebody invests themselves into something before it's created. They oftentimes linger beyond that. So what you're saying is that not only has Gala produced games, essentially, but is now also cross-pollinating into other game publishers that are also attracting into the Gala ecosystem.
Exactly, yeah. And our primary goal at the end of this is building good games that people want to play and then implementing blockchain into it, not building blockchain and then implementing games. Now, obviously, you've seen there are pre-sales. So, there's a way of crowdfunding it that everyone's interested in for one way or another. But I think at the end of the day, what really does matter and what will be sustainable are the good games. You can have a bad play-to-earn game right now, and you can get 1.5 million users, DAU, but I don't think that's going to last.
I agree, and we can dive in. Mike, did you have something to say there?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think it's really important that Gala Games is focusing on the players first and the good games first, because while it's important to realize that there's other communities, like some people are going to be wanting to get NFTs just because they like owning it, or it's an investment or something like that, and maybe they're not exactly players of the game. So there's going to be a small portion like that. But those people come because they hear about the community and the people that actually play the game. So really it starts from all about building a good game first. So just because you have NFTs in your game doesn't mean your game's going to be good or it's going to be worth a lot of money, right? You have to have a good game first, and I think that's really important.
I completely agree with that. And there's an element of crypto where I feel a lot of the crypto community is essentially numb to these buzzwords being integrated into various topics, like Kodak integrating blockchain, right? Oh, stock pumped, and then of course it's going to dump, and then nothing fruitful arrives from that. But the actual utility of creating a game first and then adding the true functionality or the core functionality of blockchain mechanics to it is where value can be earned. Now, Jesse, you mentioned something on play to earn, and for the audience, I think actually Han You also are in the play-to-earn space as well. Can you talk a little bit more about play-to-earn mechanics and why why blockchain is necessary for this and why this adds value to the community?
So as a company, like we have been building blockchain game from really the early phase, 2019. So
a little bit louder.
Sort of a down of blockchain gaming. At that time, we were thinking that we were kind of on the same page as Michael. That, yeah. So I think there are two types of games. We thought that there are two types of game. One is blockchain game, and two is sort of a gamified blockchain. And we try to envision this to be the gaming should always be the subset of gaming as an entertainment. So we should first focus on gaming content. So since then, we've been building blockchain games that are putting priority on the game content first. And that's how we've been building League of Kingdoms and all the other games that we have launched in the market. And so coming to this year, we're seeing a lot of innovations and a lot of tractions that are generated, and a lot of around Axie Infinity and YGG and all this. Play-to-earn revolutions are taking off. So we think there are a lot of infrastructures right now to make the play-to-earn makes more sense at this market conditions, and we're actually embarking on more advanced tokenomics in order to introduce more play-to-earn functions to our games. And I think the market landscape has changed quite a bit since then. Yeah.
That's very well said. And with play-to-earn, the thing that's kind of unique about gaming and blockchain is we have this coalescence essentially of two motivators or many motivators. When we think about gaming, we think about what is it that makes us game? We find the achievement factor of feeling like we've accomplished something or that we've struggled and otherwise overcome this diversity of this game being difficult. That's why anybody in this room might have played Dark Souls for more than 10 minutes, right? You don't play it because you enjoy dying. You play it because you enjoy that factor of achievement of feeling like you accomplished something. And more than anything, people like that feeling of knowing that they made money. Now, play-to-earn is kind of this unique mechanism that you couldn't really fully trust an entity or a company to pay you at the rates that they were otherwise promising. Now, with blockchain and smart contracts, you can essentially be guaranteed certain levels of pay, essentially, based on your level of commitment to a game. So what you get is you get a coalition of both gaming, the intrinsic motivators of gaming, where you get those dopamine rushes, combined with the dopamine hits of making money. And then you also get the fact that you get other countries that may be a little bit lower income and so forth. And many of these companies may even abuse these game mechanics in which they will use it as a primary source of income. So the coalition between play-to-earn mechanisms and gaming has really been a core fundamental of blockchain, really, and kind of making that bridge. Now, for the first time, many users are now coming over to blockchain because they're playing a game that it includes it. So this might be their first crypto experience. So as we're somewhat of torchbearers, I guess you could say at this panel, we have various roles, both being B2B and B2C, business to business and business to consumer. So business to business being where you have a marketplace and you're otherwise trying to facilitate the on-ramp of new players into the space and bringing more new players as in new companies or developers into the space, and then trying to help them to do so. Pete, you yourself have been kind of an advocate for this entire bridge. Now, I myself am a console gamer. I have been for many years. I don't like sitting at a desk. I like sitting on a couch and being lazy. So right. I'm a console gamer in that regard. Now, your core focus, tell a little bit about that, because from what you were sharing earlier, you're looking to build something of a bridge between what it is between console gaming and the opportunities for blockchain and overcoming something of a stigma with this.
Right.
So tell me a little bit more, or tell all of us about that.
Yeah, look, we know there's Web3 and there's an angle there for sure. Console games are the next thing. How do you talk a publisher into wanting to be a part of this when you've got to fight with a whole army of lawyers at a place like Activision who don't want to get into any entanglements with the government and regulations and SEC? But at the same time, the most important, are you getting them monetized? Are they getting a cut out of it? Is the developer getting a cut? And is the audience having fun and potentially playing to earn? And so for us, we're looking into that. We have a console game. It's pretty straightforward. How we monetize it, whether it's by financing more of the production of the game, the downloadable content, the UGC, or just other ancillary parts to it are things we're exploring every day. But my conversations, because I'm a studio guy, I've produced games for studios. You walk in, you say, we need this much money, they give it to you, and you put it on the disc. It's totally different today. And so if you want to create that next, my analogy is creating a GameStop, but we don't want that if we want everyone to get paid or at least be into it. So either get publishers to find a way to have some residual payments or a revenue scheme, or you would just be disruptive, like become like a Netflix of sorts, where they're disrupting traditional studios with their model. And that's definitely an angle that can happen for sure. It's just you got to show that there's money. Gala Games, some of the guys who are gaining traction here are really good use cases for talking to a publisher and saying, look, it's not going to be this way forever, and you need to pivot, but the big companies are going to take a lot longer. But you got to show them that it can happen, and you got to make sure you're taking care of the audience, right? You got a cool core game loop, like we talked about, that's fun, and that they can monetize and have a system for refunds and anti-scam and all the things you want to do to protect your audience, because the minute they feel like they're not, they're gonna get mad at you and backlash. So there's a lot of different levels on how to incorporate this kind of stuff. But I think it's really interesting and cool. And I just want to add really quickly, because we talked about Metaverse, sorry to just change the subject, but we were discussing how Roblox is a potential Metaverse, and I would much rather see something like that than be in Meta. Like Facebook is kind of like for old people, so like what's the new thing, and should be owned by everybody. Like I think the Metaverse should be free, or should be an open thing that everyone has a part of. That's the whole point of blockchain. And so with that paradigm and model, where does a publisher fit in? Maybe they won't anymore, or they're only going to be relegated to big budget things like Disney makes Marvel movies, Call of Duty will be an Activision thing, and everything outside of that realm of a budget is going to just be the community, all of us together making something cool. And that's kind of the dream. And I know it's still a little out there, but I believe that's where we'd like to see it go. That's the point of everything with DeFi and everything, right?
Well, it definitely starts with that dream. And as I mentioned, we're kind of torchbearers in that way, right? Like we have a vision, we have a dream as to what can happen with blockchain, but it's a matter of how do we then motivate these key players, such as the game developers, the game publishers, or even GameStop for that matter, who serves much less of a purpose than a Wall Street bets pump and dump at this point, given that most games are purchased digitally at this. So how do we then motivate, or what would be the use cases for a publisher to essentially do something like this? Now, we talked earlier where we had a little fireside chat, the five of us here, and we talked about ways that this could essentially alleviate a stigma for some of these publishers, right? We've talked about microtransactions and how microtransactions often have a stigma from their communities as to, okay, we paid $60 for a game, why are we paying $5 for this weapon, or $20 for this item, or $30 for this item? And there's a stigma of paying the man, essentially, or paying this publisher more and more money. But what are some things that blockchain could help a publisher to potentially monetize other channels in a way that might be better received by their communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think those might even be ancillary items, and certainly not the pay-to-win items, or even things that are... Look, I imagine that if you had a guild armor, and that's all he did was rank up, and there's a meta game of that person creating content, and they sell it or loan it, and you can find a way to get the developer or the publisher to get a cut, and it becomes a contractual thing where they have a piece of this blockchain because they're not going to do it themselves. Maybe that's the toughest part, right? I think getting gamers to have fun doing it is straightforward. I think we're seeing it already. Like you have a good game, and the way you monetize it doesn't matter as long as the monetization fits into the narrative of the game and the experience of the agency and all that fun stuff. So that's done. But the publishers are the trickiest part. They have all the money, and all they do is what? QA, put it in a box for you, and distribute it. And so those things already exist outside of a publisher, potentially, right? And so, then it becomes, if you need them, you could do this and set up a contract. Basically, that's what I would do. I would just set up a contract that says, we have our own system, and we'll give you a cut for X amount of distribution dollars and QA dollars. I'll give you a cut of whatever our blockchain is, and it'll be super cool because everyone's doing it, and so all the cool kids are doing, and monetizing today is not as fun as it used to be, right? Like, people are really kind of standoffish on it. And it's stigma. Fortnite does it, it's totally cool. Another game does it, and it's, egregious. And so it's just all about understanding your community, to be honest. And sometimes publishers don't, where the game devs do, because we're also the people that play games. And so I use that a lot in my negotiations. Like, I'm a producer, but I'm a developer. I'm in there making the game with everybody. And so I understand what the audience wants, which sometimes falls apart at the publisher level. Sorry if I'm kind of go on a bird walk, but there's so many pieces to it.
Good.
And it's just, you're going to have to just contractually find a way to get them involved. It's not going to be the cut they want, but it's like, hey, if you have a brand new IP, this is a really cool IP, no, we're not going to sell it to you. You're not going to own it, but we'll give you a piece of the back end and the blockchain, introduce a new tech into your pipeline. That might be the angle for a publisher if they're forward thinking enough, which is tricky for big companies to pivot. Anyway, there's a lot of hurdles.
Michael, you had something there.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing that I think is nice about this kind of new era of Web3 is you don't necessarily have to cater to publishers anymore necessarily. Sure, that will always be an option, but I think one thing we want to stray away from is how do you appeal to these publishers when you have to keep in mind, like, they're really in it for the profit. So one thing they might look at is like play to earn. So how much revenue can they generate from it? And if their metrics are purely based off of that, they might incentivize developing games that are really grindy and just there to really just right off the tail of the play and earn game. So if you're really targeting publishers, the best games might not be coming out because they're just looking at new monetization schemes, right? So that's something to be aware of like when we're new developers are making new games. And I think Gala has taken a good approach to that because it is something that's incorporated, but that's not their primary focus, right? And I think that's a really important thing to keep that trajectory so we don't get sidetracked by okay, let's go and change all the way that we build games so that we can, it's not necessarily fun, but it's profitable now, right?
It's not about chasing profit, it's about pleasing your community, essentially. Community is what brings the power. Jesse, did you have more to add to that?
Yeah, just to add, I mean, we deal with publishers every day, and the hardest thing with them is getting them to understand the new monetization strategies that can be there. You know, they just want to sell the game and make money. And when you release a game on a platform like ours and a lot of other platforms, you don't buy the game. You know, it's not like a $100 fee to get the CD or whatever. So, you know, getting them to understand that, one, yeah, you can do sales of in-game items to people who don't want to play and earn those items, who want to be good up front. But then there's the continuing potential residual income of secondary sales, you know. So if you're playing Mirandus and you have a sword and then you sell that sword to somebody else on OpenSea, you know, 5% goes to the game developer and a portion of that goes to the publisher. And then there's things like microtransactions, you know, something that we're going to be doing and I'm very excited for is we're going to have a rental type model where, you know, some of the NFTs, they're expensive, and you might purchase the NFT, but you don't want to play the game. So you rent it to somebody else who plays for you, you know, and there's a fee involved, and the publishers and the game developer can all take a kind of cut out of that. So there really is a lot of new monetization strategies available for them. It's just really hard to get them to open their eyes to what the future is going to look like.
Completely, and that you raise a good point with that, in which NFTs have become a very big buzz, and with gaming, you know, achievements, certain items that you unlock, as soon as you stop playing that game, you lose that, essentially. But what if you had an NFT that memorialized it, something of that nature, right? And we were having the discussion that, you know, there's, for example, World of Warcraft, there were legendary items, you know, there was the Thunder Fury, maybe one or two of them on a server at any given time. Now, if Blizzard approached the community and said, you can have a Thunder Fury for $500 tonight, they would say, fuck off, Blizzard, we're not paying you $500. That's ridiculous, you're trying to do a pay-to-win game. Now, consider another individual offers to rent their NFT to a guild or a clan that essentially allows them to beat a boss in the Molten Core or whatever, I guess, instance they couldn't previously, and now Blizzard makes a small 2% microtransaction. That is some of the opportunities that it comes to with NFTs and other monetization channels and the education opportunities of which you don't have to have the traditional pay $60 for a game and then a $10 monthly subscription. It could actually be far beyond that, as people will pay for things that give them experience and new opportunities, but they won't want to necessarily pay the developer directly. They may want to pay the community and support the community in that regard. So, Jesse, in that regard, what ways is Gala otherwise empowering their community with these NFTs, or what is their goal in terms of kind of giving this community empowerment?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we're doing to empower our community, in a sense, is play to earn. We have one game that's live, a couple more games that are coming soon. I think one that's going to be launched before the end of the year. And the one that's live, called Townstar, has a play to earn mechanism where people can accrue NFTs, however they get them, and they can place them in game and they can earn off of them. Even before we had that, we had a kind of pseudo play to earn mechanism. And every day I get messages from people in the Philippines or family members, friends, who tell me that I was able to retire or quit my job, or people in the Philippines who are able to buy a house together, and they're just doing that by playing our games. My dad actually was able to retire off of our games, which is really, really cool to see, because he didn't love his job, so.
Your dad needs to be a spokesperson.
Yeah, we should get him up here. But yeah, so we're just giving people the opportunity to find a new way to make their mark in the world, find a new way to do good and to use their skills. And if their skills are being just kick-ass at gaming, you can take that and you can make money off of it. And then, if you accrue a lot of high-level NFTs, you might be able to sell them for a good amount of money. And a reverse of that, which is really cool to think about, is you could play a game and you could buy an NFT for that game, and that game could flop entirely, which could make that NFT worth more money because the game is gone, and now it's, everyone's like, oh, I really want that NFT from that game. So
we're talking like ET from Atari status, right?
Yeah, imagine owning that NFT. People want it, it's like owning a Furby. Nobody really wants it, but it's worth money,
Yeah, the pet rock almost, right?
Yeah.
Something to that. Very well. So one thing we haven't touched base on too much was next generation gaming and Metaverse. And so, we're in the Metaverse dome. So I feel like we should touch base a little bit on how next gen gaming can otherwise merge with that of the Metaverse. So I'll toss this out as an open question. In what ways are you guys looking to incorporate Metaverse into your next generation of gaming, or how are you thinking of ways that gaming and Metaverse can otherwise align or intersect with it in the future of your developments? And if no one has one, I can jump in and kind of start.
Well, what's your definition of Metaverse then? So, Grand Theft Auto has its own universe or Metaverse in a sense, or you're talking something much bigger, but
yeah, so let's talk like Metaverse, for example, with the extent of being able to enjoy the game within a Metaverse environment. So if there's a Metaverse ecosystem or something of that in which a game can be participated, or a sandbox or something of that.
Yeah, that's how I look at it too. But I have a quick answer because we're making a game and we want to make a world out of it. And so for us, you want to lay in the world and then hopefully people keep coming back to it. I think the whole one-off game every year is just not going to work anymore. So we have to look at how we can build a game universe. Whether or not we allow a lot of players to help each other or work into it, it's just a matter of networking code and how much of a game we want to make with the budget we have. But I don't know. On the console side, for me, it's a different conversation because I think it's much more prevalent in Web3 and other places. But for me, otherwise, our game already has kind of a big universe. It's meant to be a game that you keep adding to. I think Destiny's a good example. It's something that you don't have to keep releasing every year and go through cost of goods, and you kind of build something that's somewhat of a gas, right? But that's maybe not exactly what a metaverse might be for some of the people here that want to know.
There's different definitions indeed. So
for sure, yeah. So I don't know if anyone else has another thought on it.
Yeah. In my opinion, Metaverse does not necessarily be something like DIY, like sort of Roblox type of game, which you have to build something from the ground up. I think where there is interoperability and a social graph, it can be called Metaverse. And we're seeing from our game and many other games in the space that less are being done under watch of game studio, and more are done outside of it. So we think that there are we kind of came across community projects and streaming channels that we haven't really knew for more than 6 months, and then we just run into a streaming channel and community which actually features our game for 100%, and that's kind of a really refreshing experience for us to kind of find out a community project that are really kind of outside of our watch. So I think that's kind of a start, a beginning of Metaverse, how this kind of expands out of just one game and being more.
The reaching of new audiences and so forth, of different intrigues and interests, right? Right.
Yeah, kind of added on to that. There's a lot of really cool things that the Metaverse will start to allow for, like being able to use items in multiple games, right? So like before there was like Super Meat Boy or some indie games, and before Metaverse or NFTs, they would just have to go and do like handshake deals of like, oh yeah, you can use our IP and we'll use yours. But now you can do things like, you can bring your CryptoPunks or something like that into your game. But going beyond that too, it doesn't have to just stay in the game world. So what we're building for Logosphere at Ikigai is basically ways to connect different industries. So people can do things like not only bring the art pieces in, but for example, it would be cool if you had a concert or something like that inside of your game. And if you were attending the in-game concert, you might be dropped a physical ticket to go watch them live in person as well. So you can start tying in things where they are playing the game and then they can use it outside of the game as well.
How something intangible could then become tangible through the results of an NFT in that way.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, so at a high basic level, a metaverse when it comes to gaming is kind of a online, interactive, interoperable world where you can, connect with anyone else playing that game or other games. When we look at our platform and what we're attempting to build, we look at each game as a potential metaverse, and then the overarching connection between the games and then the rest of the world as another metaverse. So, for example, to go back to Mirandus, a game that we're creating, it's going to be an MMORPG, and so people are going to play in this game, and what you do is going to affect others, and you can go to meeting halls and interact with everyone. But then, when you step out of that game, the traditional way when you switch from one game to another is you take the game out, put another game in. We view that metaverse as, kind of like Wreck-It Ralph, if any of you have seen the movie, where you step into the game and you step out into like the arcade, in the computer, and you can step into another game. There's another interactive world where you can run into people who are maybe playing games, maybe doing other things, sorry. You might find out about games you never knew about because they just came out of that game. And that's where the power of the metaverse, the power of that interoperable, connected world really lies in this ecosystem. And the hope is that it's not just like, for us, it's not just Gala's metaverse and, this company's metaverse, but rather that we can interop with each other and just create, metaverses with metaverses with metaverses,
It's like metaverse inception, essentially, that's happening at that, right?
Yeah.
And that is kind of the unique element of what's happening with metaverses. That metaverse, in my opinion, is a conjoining of community, right? Like it's no longer one metaverse versus another. It's how can these metaverses align to bring more value and more benefits to their communities. And I find that, Ceek, for example, we just created this blockchain metaverse alliance where we brought in a number of gaming projects as well as different NFT utilities projects and so forth, as we do see that the co-opetition, so to speak, of bringing in more great minds to bring a better unified experience is what blockchain can enable. And that's where we talked just a moment ago about NFTs and interoperability between one game and another. And you were referencing the Wreck-It Ralph, right? Where in Ceek Metaverse, for example, you can have a VR headset or engage through it manually through your phone, but then go to various games within that metaverse where you might have an NFT from the Ceek Metaverse, but that NFT can then power you up in another metaverse that is the metaverse within a metaverse in that regard. So I think we've hit the metaverse keyword enough times in this conversation,
My head hurts.
just through that. So, Michael, did you have something to add on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned something that I thought was really cool about like it's a sense of community. So like when you're playing your game, a lot of times you want to talk to people and you're getting along with your friends and you're all having a good time playing your own game. But you feel a sense of community and there's forums around it. But what the metaverses also kind of allow for is for you to connect and meet more people. And one of the ways that you kind of do that in the real world is you bond over some shared interest, right? And the metaverse is good for that because you can be talking to someone else like, oh, hey, I have the same one. And it might be for a different game, but you can connect over something similar. So it's going to be a good way to, get introduced to more communities outside of just either your game or even outside of gaming itself. It could be via, like I mentioned, like music or art or something like that. So just having similar talking points, it'll be good to get more people together with similar shared interests.
Exactly, and that's how we build friendships, is through relatability. And we're in a unique environment in the world now in which, for the first time, we don't have much of that friendship, relationship, like meeting new people and so forth, where perhaps people who might have looked at the metaverse and thought Ready Player One was a joke and like I would never see myself doing that, may have no other choice if they're otherwise lacking that social activity that we all need and strive for in some capacity. So in what ways do you think that the metaverse is now, do you feel that the metaverse now is maybe a little bit more, I guess, acceptable or more of an intrigue? Do you feel like perhaps the pandemic may have contributed to the overall interest or adoption of the metaverse curve? Anyone?
Yeah. Who wants to go?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, right? For sure. I mean, you talk about connected worlds, and we all love that. Marvel's done it with, Disney's done it with Marvel, and we see everywhere where if you can feel like part of a connected world. Harry Potter, I mean, I guess you could call that. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? So on the digital scale, that's all we're discussing, right? Is having connected worlds and the NFTs to have a through line that all makes sense. My challenges when I think about that is how can an NFT earn in one game work in another game depending on what the games are? It has to be a through line. Like if I had a sword, but then I go into an army shooter game, what's the sword, right? So you have to think of different ways of creating through lines and NFTs that make sense across different connected worlds, as it were.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but it's not a hard problem. It's a design problem, and it's a fun problem to solve, right?
It
We're
is.
doing this. Super
New
fun.
problems.
Yeah, but they're cool. They're design problems, art problems. They're game design problems. Super fun.
So I think we have barely 1 minute, but I wanted to give an opportunity if anybody in the audience had a question for any of our panelists today. Right here. Yes, so the question is, what do we think of Ready Player One? In relation to the metaverse, anybody want to take a stab at it?
I'll take it. I mean, it's a great movie, first and foremost. I really like it. But I think it's an example of maybe a dystopian metaverse, so that's not where I hope we go. It's a possibility, but I think when you look at the overall way that Ready Player One works, it's pretty realistic in how a metaverse could be other than all the dystopian stuff.
And Ready Player One essentially is a premise of an escape of an existing reality that otherwise is unfavorable, so people escape to this other reality, which is, I guess synonymous for many different things in our current reality that we experience. But to that extent, if you want some really interesting reading materials, look at Elon Musk's simulation theory and so forth, which you can actually get some really interesting connections between what Ready Player One was trying to convey from a philosophical level and what actually it could bring in terms of a vision for the metaverse reality. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Michael.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think Ready Player One is, in my mind, a good example if Facebook or Meta were to do the metaverse. It would be the next social media, but it's going to be all owned by a corporate, right? Like, who owns that data? That's that's how I kind of see if Facebook's evolution would be.
All right, we're getting the wrap signal. So thank you, everybody, for listening. It's been great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.